instant reaction following a highly anticipated clash at the Emirates. Arsenal won, Man City won, and I'll be honest, it does feel like 2 points dropped from that. Um, I don't know what happened, but Man City were there for the taking. Let's be honest. They were there for the taking, and Arsenal were far too reserved. There's no way you can kind of disagree about that. I don't think. I'll kind of go through quickly my thoughts of the game and just summarize things. I was on the Canon podcast earlier for the instant reaction on there, and I've had a little bit of time now to think about it. Unfortunately, not much has changed since then, I'll be honest. So let's go through the first half. The first half, the conservative start and the counter punch. That's what I'll call it. And the story of the first half was Mikel Arteta's approach. He reverted back to this defense first pragmatism. And to be honest, it was so strange that Arteta stuck to exactly what we knew and what he knows, whereas Pep completely abandoned his philosophy, I guess you'd call it. They came out of the traps, real high press, really try to make us under pressure, suffocate us, and over time they started to retreat back, and then they really did catch us with this just a sucker punch, this counterattack with Erling Haaland. I mean, before that had even started, though, let's just discuss the lineup. The lineup was the main source of all the frustration. It lacked the intent and the will to win the game. It felt like there was a fear of losing and not a want of winning. The pairing of Leandro Trossard and Mikel Merino was the thing that I really felt needed scrutinising, and having Trossard on the left meant that we lacked Eze's guile and his creativity and Martinelli's pace and his work rate. I feel that Trossard is maybe the more efficient player out of the three, but most of his kind of statistical positives really come from him impacting off the bench. And I just felt that the pairing of both Merino and Trossard meant that we really lacked any verve in attack. No real kind of creative outlets, no real pace in attack. And it didn't send a good message. It didn't send a good message to the players. It didn't send a good message to the fans. It did send a good message, however, to Manchester City, because they must have looked at that lineup and thought, okay, we can deal with that. We can get a foothold into this game, and then we can go at Arsenal. And that's exactly what they did. Let's go on to Merino. I think Merino was probably chosen because of his out of possession triggers and him being kind of like an outlet for the front line. I previously discussed this with Wackles and, how Merino helped with the kind of leading of the press and as an outball. Gyökeres is not the best at that. That is not his game, and that gave us one route, over the top towards Merino. But it just meant that we had this same midfield three of Zubimendi, Rice, and Merino. It's so disappointing. There were options there. You could play Eze as a 10. You could play Ethan Winery at the 10. But the biggest problem I have with this is not that, we lacked creativity and Arteta made this choice and we could have had someone better. My biggest concern is that I was not surprised. We all would have predicted this three in the midfield. And that's got to be alarming. That's got to be something that we think this is a damning indictment that we can all see that the midfield are going to lack something going forward. And Mikel Arteta still persisted with it. Again, I said on the Cannon podcast, I think that hat trick for Mourinho might be actually really debilitating for us. It might be something that now Mikel Arteta kind of leans into, and he looks at and he thinks, well, I know what he can do. I know how efficient he can be. I know what his finishing can be like. But we are in a completely different setup to Spain. And I'm truly starting to worry now whether this is going to be another thing like Kai Havertz playing the box crashing role from midfield, which didn't work, and him constantly sticking to it. That worked in isolation, in moments. But unfortunately, the longevity of it is just non-existent. And I worry that Mikel Arteta using Mikel Marino as a 10, it's worrying, to say the least. Kind of going on, like in terms of the actual match, City capitalised quickly. Arsenal at the beginning had just under 80% of possession in the opening 10 minutes. Yet City struck first. It came in the 8th minute, devastating counter-attack. Erling Haaland, one possession near the centre circle and sprung an attack. He was phenomenal. He is well known for his finishing, yet with one pass, he took 5 or 6 Arsenal players out of the equation. With Zubimendi being high, with Gabriel being high, it was really, he had a straightforward path directly through to goal. There are a calamity of errors. For me, I feel that Gabriel should be retreating as soon as we've lost possession the first time. Yet he stays high. I feel that, again, passing lanes could be closed by Saliba, or he could be closing down Reinders. Yet he doesn't. There needs to be more communication and get the pace from Gabriel on the kind of, the run back. It was just non-existent. What happened to Gabriel? It looked like he was jogging back. And that's not a Gabriel we know. But nonetheless, we controlled territory. And I mean, the territory is a good thing. However, it led to no shots. And Madueke did carve out a chance for sheer strength for Ricardo Calafiori. But again, it was cleared. And our first attempt on goal didn't even arrive until past that hour mark. And Madueke, again, headed wide. The frustration's clear. Like, you don't get points for territory. There's no cutting edge. Donnarumma only had to make 3 or 4 saves over 90 minutes. And that is not good enough. And in that opening half, Madueke was left out kind of on an island. There was no triangle. There was no pod, if you're talking like Arteta. And I felt our output was give it to Madueke, see what he can do. And it's just not good enough. Arteta's kind of seen as this manager that wants to calculate his way through a game, not kind of really go in and set a real precedence for the game and say, we are here for 3 points. I think George said he showed cowardice in the first half and he didn't utilize any of the potential attacking options from the squad. It's just such a frustrating first half. Just so annoyed with it. But there we go. Let's go into the second half. So something good about this. Now, it may not have been the change that I personally would have made. I think Trossard should have left. And I don't know if Madueke's injured. That would be the most obvious reason for him coming off. I suggested, oddly enough, and I hate this option usually, but I thought Madueke was doing really, really well on that right wing. And I felt that maybe Bukayo Saka could have come on the left and Eze could have come into the middle instead of Marino. And I would have liked to have seen that. I would also have liked to have seen what would have happened if we played Eze on the left side of the midfield and then switched Rice to the right. But it did seem that as soon as we came out in that second half, Zubimendi was playing far higher, and he ended up coming out to the right. Declan Rice often coming to the base of midfield, which is great to see. Different options, different ways of playing. And it was Trossard who stayed on, but Mikel Arteta made these substitutes and made these changes at 45 minutes at half-time. There's something that he's not known for. There's something that we don't regularly see. There's something we need to see more. But it does show that he identified the problems and he identified his own mistakes. And that's really important for the the progression of the club, progression for him as a manager. Meanwhile, Pep started to retreat. After the first goal, they kind of turned into more of a mid-block team, and towards the second half and the end of the second half, obviously, in the end of the game, turned into a low block. Whether that's situational or not is a different matter, but nevertheless, we turned Pep into Pulis. I haven't seen anything like that from Pep. I think we had more possession in this game against City than any other team in Premier League history has against Pep. Arteta is the first manager to be unbeaten for 5 games in a row against Pep. The second most possession ever taken away against Pep is Arsenal again in 22-23. So there are points of positivity. However, there are silver linings. And I guess the biggest silver lining was Martinelli entering the pitch. Eze picks the ball up, and it is the most beautiful ball over the top. I don't want to do a kind of comparison between Odegaard and Eze, but as a short comparison and something that we need more from Odegaard is exactly that. The willingness and the bravery to make a pass like that, and it's the most perfect ball over, and Martinelli takes it forward. Superb finish over Donnarumma, who was excellent in this game, and right towards the end, he gets that goal. It's brilliant to see from Martinelli. He's obviously taking the ball by the horns. He's taking this challenge on, and he's getting his rewards for it. It was amazing. But it does show that Martinelli needs to be closer to the goal. He needs to be in central areas. And probably that he is now a finisher for this club. And he's not someone that should be starting, similar to Trossard, who does his best work coming off the bench. And that's statistically, that's just how it is. In terms of the numbers, so we won the expected goal, 0.8 to 0.7. Had an incredible field tilt, recorded over double the final third entries in zone 14 touches, and we generated better territory, better ideas. The overall feeling of this game, though, is that it is 2 points dropped against a City side that were there for the taking. And after that Liverpool loss, where again we lack the cutting edge, I just think it's an even bigger kick to the teeth. It's going to be a hard pill to swallow that we haven't taken the 3 points and we've fallen further behind in the title race already. And it just means now we have got to beat Newcastle United. We have to go at St James's Park and get 3 points. There is no other alternative. So the pressure is on Arteta now, and the pressure is on him for making positive, selections in the next game. I think if Eze is left out from the start again, questions will be asked of Arteta, and rightfully so. I also think that it's about time that we act like the big boys. We act like that we are the favourites. Because today, Arteta acted like we were the underdogs. And we need the best players on the ball, on the team sheet. Like and subscribe. I'll catch you in the next one.